and a very warm welcome to Captivate Growth Labs. Very exciting times, very excited to be here. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, we will hold on a few minutes to, give chance for people to join, because maybe, I don't know, they need to make a emergency cup of tea or cup of coffee. Maybe they need to finish a project that they're stuck into. But yeah, let's just hold fire and just wait a few minutes to let people join us. So whilst we are waiting, those that come to Growth Labs regularly, you know the drill, but let's get interactive. Yeah. So in the comments, let us know where in the world you are joining us from and the name of your podcast. I can already see, I've got an alert at the right-hand side. I can already see that we've got some comments coming in. So let's welcome people. Who have we got first? We've got a trustworthy, faithful Danny Brown. Those that are a Captivate customer will know Danny Brown. Danny Brown is awesome. He heads up customer support. He does a great job. Hello all. Happy Tuesday. Looking forward to this stream. Thank you, Danny. Yes, I'm very much looking forward to this stream. And do not fret, because I will introduce this month's topic and our guest very shortly. Who else have we got? Jack Chambers Ward. Hi, Jack. Sarah and M, what a spectacular pair. Yeah, I'd say me and wow, there you go. I've just realized Jack has done a little sneak preview there into who I've got joining me. I should have probably checked that, but I'm going to use that, aren't I? I'm going to use that to sort of bait people in. But yeah, who I've got, we are a bit of a dynamic duo. Let's just say that. Joking. Excited for this one, as I'm preparing some award entries later this week. Again, all the hints. Nikki Valence, hi there. You are in St. Albans. Sorry, probably introduced that wrong. Podcast is the Creative Switch. Danny Brown there saying hello to Jack and Nikki. All right, Jack, getting a bit of sass from Jack now in the comments. You did put it in the video title too, bit of a giveaway. Yeah, okay. So without further ado, what is this month's topic? What are we doing with Growth Labs? So we are going to be talking about how you can write an award-winning podcast entry. And who have I got? I have M. Yeah, I was talking to M behind the scenes, and she was like, I want to go with M because I want to be the Beyonce of the podcasting world. And I love that. I'm here for that. So yeah, love that, M. I did say, if they are the Beyonce of the industry, I want to be the Pink of the industry. Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Who is M? An experienced podcaster. She creates, produces, and hosts the film history podcast Verbal Diorama. Cracking podcast. If you've not yet listened to it, go and check that out. Passionate about independent podcasting and supporting other indie creators. She's also the co-founder of the Independent Podcast Awards. Now, before I welcome to the screen, just want to remind you how we'll do it. So we will be doing a Q&A session at the end. So throughout M's talk, throughout her presentation on helping us nail that award-winning podcast entry, if you have any questions at all, pop them in the comments throughout the live stream. And all we ask is that you put question in capitals at the beginning, because then it's easier for us to spot them, pull them out, and yeah, we'll go through all your wonderful questions at the end. So let's get M or Beyonce onto the screen. Hi, M.
Oh, I can't believe you said the Beyonce thing. Hello, everyone. Hi. I'm Em. I am anonymous. Not quite the Beyonce of podcasting. Beyonce is like so far up there that it's unreachable. I'm kind of a bit further down here, but but yeah, my name's Em, and I host the podcast Verbal Diorama. And yeah, I'm also the co-founder of the Independent Podcast Awards, and that is why I am here. And yeah, hello everyone. Bit nervous, I'll be honest, because I very rarely do something like this. But I'm really, really happy to be here. And thank you, Sarah, so much for the amazing introduction. And thank you to the people in the comments as well for being so kind. It's really lovely because I know a couple of people in the comments as well. So yeah, it's really cool to be here. Thank you so much for having me for a Growth Labs, because I watch Growth Labs often. And it's been one of those things that I'll be like, oh, I'd like to do one of those one day. Now I'm here, I'm a little bit like, oh my God, this is so scary, but it'll be fine. We're going to get through it. It's all good.
You're in a safe space, Em, and do you know what? I am so excited for this topic and what we're about to talk about, or the royal we there, what you are. Sorry.
That's fine, Sarah. Stick around. We'll have a chat. It's all good.
I've got some great tips. No. But yeah, this is such an important topic because submitting for podcast awards, putting yourself forward is great, isn't it? It's great for that exposure. It's great for getting that recognition. It helps with growth. The benefits are just like list as long as my arm. There's so many benefits when it comes to submitting and winning podcast awards. So it's so great to have someone like yourself who is not only in like a seasoned, very experienced podcaster, but you're one of the people behind the fantastic Independent Podcast Awards. So this is going to be such a cracking episode. And someone said to me the other day that I say cracking a bit too much. So yeah, I'm gonna try and not say cracking.
No, it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, I think it's kind of a unique position to be in for me personally, because I am a podcaster. I've been podcasting for over 5 years now, so I know what it's like to be an indie podcaster. But I also know what it's like to be kind of behind the scenes, you know, from co-creating the Independent Podcast Awards and working with the team at Y Now last year. I mean, it's a hell of an operation, but it's so fulfilling. Kind of both strands, you know, the independent podcasting side and the awards side is such a fulfilling and amazing thing to be able to see the incredible level of indie podcasting that we have in the UK and Ireland right now. Obviously, as Captivate, you will see obviously a small slice of that pie with all of the indie podcasts that are on Captivate, but just in the industry as a whole, like the UK and Ireland independent podcasting industry is so rich and so varied and so full of incredible people who are so passionate about what they do and what they offer. And it's kind of one of those things that there's so much talent out there, but when you're against these big corporates like the BBC and Spotify and, you know, all of these kind of places that do their own original programming, it is kind of sometimes hard, I think, to be seen and noticed. And that's really where the Independent Podcast Awards came from. It was to give a platform to those podcasts who are like me, you know, and that was really where the idea came from. Because I have put in for awards myself many times in the past. And I just wanted like an avenue where everyone was kind of against their peers. Everyone was on like an even keel. And that's kind of the most important thing as far as I'm concerned, is that all indie podcasters, they're all on the same level. There is no one who is higher or lower than anyone else. Everyone is equal. And so everyone has an equal opportunity to be nominated, to win, all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's really important to me.
And just to sort of add to that, Jack has sort of made a fantastic point there that growth and increasing visibility for independent podcasters or independent podcasts, sorry, is the most difficult thing. So, Jack, don't you worry, because I am going to leave the screen now and I'm going to leave you all in the very capable hands of Em. Before I do leave, Em, I believe you need to share your screen.
I do. And hopefully I'll be able to do it. And I won't mess it up. It'll be fine. I do this on Teams at work all the time. I am a professional.
This will be a smooth transition, people.
It will be
do
so
not fret.
smooth. So yes, let me do that, because I have got a little presentation that I have put together. So hopefully that will be available at some point in the near future. And hopefully,
Just
there
like
we
that.
go. There it is.
Right. So
Yeah.
I will leave now. But just a reminder again that any questions that pop up throughout Em's wonderful presentation, just pop them in the comments. Just make sure that you put question in capital at the beginning, because then it'll be easy for me to pick them out at the end. So whatever question, and this is a safe space, isn't it, Em? There's no such thing as a silly question, right? We're all here to
Absolutely
learn.
not. Ask anything you want.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Right. Have fun, and I shall be back in a bit.
Thanks, Sarah. Right. Okay. So now that I've got you all to myself, here's the real reason why I'm here. No, I'm joking. I have a terrible sense of humor. Right. Okay. So first of all, I was not going to do this on my own. I was actually going to have Emma Turner from Why Now here with me. She is the events, they can't even speak. She is the head of events and publicity at Why Now. And Emma is basically the head honcho. She is the one who put everything together last year for the show. Her and obviously the amazing team at Why Now. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here today. But the plan was we were going to do this together. So I am going to try my best to do this on my own. And hopefully, if you have obviously any questions, anything that I can't answer, I will obviously direct you in the field of Emma Turner, because she is the absolute best person to answer any questions related to the Independent Podcast Awards specifically. But I feel like what we're going to be talking about can kind of relate to really any podcast awards or anything that you might want to put your podcast up for. But obviously, this is going to be very focused on the Independent Podcast Awards, because that's kind of what I know. So, yes. I obviously last year worked with Emma on the Independent Podcast Awards. And basically, why am I here? Like, why am I qualified to do this? Well, I mean, the co-creating of the Independent Podcast Awards is kind of a thing. It's not something that I really focus on a great deal, but I was also part of the advisory board for last year's awards and this year's awards as well, which was basically a panel of independent podcasters who basically helped shape the awards and to make it the best possible podcast awards for the independent podcasting community. And I was also a judge as well. It was my first time judging anything, so it was definitely experience for me, because obviously judging your peers is an interesting position to be in. But honestly, the caliber and the quality of entries last year blew me away. It was a bit like, if I could have awarded, my vote to literally everyone, then I would have, because honestly, the quality of independent podcasting in the UK and Ireland is incredible, genuinely amazing. Anyone who's in this chat and you are an independent podcaster, like, trust me, you are doing amazing work right now. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. As for what I do, so I host podcast Verbal Diorama. I've been doing that for 5 years. I do that completely solo, so I don't have any help. I do everything on my own. And I know that there are so many other podcasters who are in the same position as me, as well as obviously podcasters who have a team of people, you know, have co-hosts and stuff like that. I don't know what it's like to have a co-host or to have help with production or editing or stuff or anything like that. But trust me, like, the imposter syndrome is firing on all cylinders right now. However, you've got me. I'm here for the next like 45 minutes or so. I'm really sorry, but we're just going to have to plow ahead and you're going to have to listen to what I've got to say. So I'm not very good at selling myself, am I? But let's talk about how to write an award-winning podcast entry. Now, obviously, as I said, this can relate to any podcast awards, but it's kind of a bit tailored to kind of what we're looking for, mostly for the Independent Podcast Awards. And you'll have to excuse me because the slides are very rudimentary. However, the actual design of the slides, I can't take credit for because, again, this is Emma and her team at Why Now. They put together these beautiful design slides for me. So hopefully it will give me the next one. Hey, yeah, it works. Okay. So what makes a good entry? And I think it's very easy to just bring up the entry page and just write something like, my podcast is great, you should listen to it. And at the end of the day, you should believe your podcast is great because it is great. And you should believe that people are going to listen to it. And people will listen to it because it's great. However, when you are putting an entry together for something specifically like this, there's obviously some certain things that we would particularly ask for. But for me personally, my podcast is about film history and I like to tell a story. So I like to say, how did this movie come about? What was the start? What was the initial idea of this movie? All the way through to, how did this movie get together? How did the cast come together? How did the VFX come together? All the way through to the conclusion, the final part of the story. And it's kind of the same with the podcast that you're submitting for any awards, but specifically for ours, it's tell the story of your podcast. Because as a judge, I want to know everything about your podcast. I will listen to your episodes and I will enjoy them, but I want to know, who are the people behind this podcast? Why do they love doing what they do? How did this idea come about? Was it just a chat down the pub with some friends? Was it a revelation that you had during therapy? How did this idea come about? And in your eyes, what is it that makes your podcast stand out? Now, a lot of people will say, oh, there's too many podcasts in the world. There's too many independent podcasts and there's too many people doing the same thing. And I suppose in a roundabout way, they'd be right. There are a lot of podcasts out there. For example, true crime. There's a lot of true crime podcasts out there. However, what makes individual true crime podcasts stand out? It will be the topics that they're talking about. Not all true crime podcasts talk about the same topic. It will be how they present that topic. It would be maybe one is a solo hosted show. Maybe one is a group of people talking about true crime. What makes your podcast stand out? And ultimately, the thing that makes your podcast stand out above, if you're a true crime podcaster, I'm using this as a good example. If you're a true crime podcaster, what makes your podcast stand out from every other true crime podcast that exists in the UK and Ireland right now that's independent? And that's you as a host, as a person, as an entity hosting this podcast. You are the unique selling point of your podcast. But we want to know from you, as the unique selling point of your podcast, what is it about your podcast that's so special? And obviously, it is important to be succinct about it. We don't need a 100-page essay about why your podcast is so great, even though everyone could write a 100-page essay about how great their podcast is. But the important thing is to tell the story of your podcast, because that is one of the most interesting things about independent podcasting is that it wasn't just an executive at the BBC who decided one day, yeah, let's make a true crime podcast because everyone loves true crime podcasts. It was you having that idea, thinking about a particular crime case that maybe has remained unsolved and thinking, oh, I'd love to do a podcast about that. Why don't I? Let's just do it. So that is one of the most important things, I think, is we want to know the story of your podcast. And one of the things that you can do to show how great your podcast is to give us supporting documents. So on our entry screen specifically, we ask you for supporting material. Supporting? Yeah, that's right. Supporting material, as well as clips and things like that. And that material can be things like download numbers. And one of the things I think puts a lot of people off is, well, what if we have low download numbers? What if we only have 10 listeners an episode or 20 listeners an episode? Is that going to go against me? And the answer is absolutely not. Because download numbers, they're not actually that important, even though as a podcaster, I look at numbers all the time. And it's like, oh no, my numbers are a bit low. I'm a bit sad. But when it comes to this, it's not actually that important. And the reason for that is, as a judge, if I'm listening to your podcast and I'm thinking, wow, this podcast is amazing, and I look at the supporting documents and it says this podcast only gets 20 downloads per episode, I'm going to think to myself, well, this podcast deserves to be noticed. This podcast is incredible. It's doing everything right. The fact it's got low download numbers, actually, maybe this podcast needs a bit of a push. Maybe more people need to hear this podcast. Maybe this is a reason for this podcast to, I don't know, get nominated, because this is an incredible podcast. So I would say, don't be afraid of low download numbers. Don't be afraid of download numbers at all, because in the same vein, if your podcast is getting 10 million downloads an episode, which, I mean, we all wish our podcast was getting 10 million downloads an episode. But again, that's not going to count against you. It's not a situation of, oh, we're only going to focus on low download numbers. That's not the case at all. But if you've got high download numbers, as a judge, I'm going to look at that and go, well, this is an incredible podcast. And their podcast numbers reflect how incredible they are. These guys definitely deserve a push. So it really doesn't matter, is basically what I'm saying. But don't be afraid of including them, because we're not going to judge you on having low download numbers, I guarantee. Things like 5-star reviews. Give us your 5-star reviews. Put it in your documents. Give us screenshots of your 5-star reviews on Podchaser and Apple and Spotify and all of that sort of stuff. Tell us how many 5-star reviews you've got, because stuff like that, it genuinely makes sense. And it's important to you as a podcaster to get those 5-star reviews. So it's important to us to know how proud you are of your 5-star reviews. So include them. Same with things like testimonials. If you get an email from a listener going, I really enjoyed the episode, I learned something from that episode helped me personally, include it. I mean, obviously, take out any personal information about the person. That would probably be a really good idea. So take out, blank out things like email addresses and stuff like that, just for security reasons. Obviously, don't include people's full names and stuff, just for the fact that, from a point of view of me as a judge, I don't care who that person is. I just care that they have taken the time to email you. So basically what I'm saying is, the more supporting evidence that you have, as far as I'm concerned, the better. I want to see all that information. I want to see how proud you are of your podcast and what your podcast has achieved, because achievements come in all shapes and sizes. So yeah, I would say definitely don't be afraid of doing that. I realize I'm waffling, but I'm really good at waffling because I have a podcast. So basically what I'm doing right now is basically what I do on my podcast. Literally just sit and talk at a microphone. So I'm basically just pretending that I'm doing that rather than there are people watching me, because that's scary. And also, if there are word counts on the entry form, please try and stick to them, only because if you go over 1 or 2 words, it doesn't matter. But if you're going to send us a 10-page essay, that's kind of a bit of a no-no. So just if there are word counts, please try and stick to them. At the end of the day, judges are people too, and it takes a lot to judge multiple podcasts in a category. So if it's a case of maybe just trimming down your entry slightly so that it fits in, that's obviously highly beneficial. And I'm just going to take a drink because I feel like I've been talking forever and my mouth's a bit dry. Hang on. Okay. So we talked a little bit about supporting evidence and about, sorry, I keep looking at that screen because it's on there. I'm not looking at my phone or anything, but supporting evidence is really important. But I'm going to go to the little next screen now. Is it going to go over? Yeah, it is. There we go. Basically, I called this make sure you include, but this is like everyone's going to include stuff like this, I expect, because I'm going to be talking about the clips that you use. Now, we ask for 3 clips for the Independent Podcast Awards. And we ask for clips in a date range. So I haven't put it on the slide, but again, please make sure your clips are within that date range. I'll mention the actual date range after, because it's on a different screen. I'm so unprofessional. Because I'm an indie podcaster. I don't do this for a living. But the clips that you choose are really important, because the clips that you choose are a snapshot of your podcast. I would love to go to a podcast, download a load of episodes and just listen to 100 episodes of your podcast. I am the sort of person, although I am a podcaster and I have a podcast and I'm very kind of involved in the indie podcast community as it currently stands, mostly movie podcasts, I'll be honest, but I'm very involved in it. And so I listen to a lot of other movie podcasts. Some of them may be in the comments right now, but I do. And so to me, the idea of going and listening to people's podcasts is amazing. I love it. I do it all the time. And I do it for several reasons. I do it because they're incredible podcasts and I love them. I do it because they're amazing people and I love them. But mostly I do it because I love indie podcasts. When Sarah was introducing me and she was like, she's a champion of indie podcasts or whatever, I can't really remember now. I mean, I don't think that I am, but I do like to support other indie podcasts. And I think it's really important. Just for me personally, I'm not suggesting that everyone has to do that, but I love listening to other people's podcasts. Just as I hope other podcasts love listening to me, because this is a community and this is a supportive community. And it always has been one of the most incredibly supportive communities that I've ever been involved in. And so I would love to just get a podcast and just listen to loads of their full episodes. Unfortunately, as a judge, I don't have time. So we ask for 3 clips of 15 minutes in length, which we kind of think will give a good indication of the quality of that podcast. So 3 different episodes throughout that date period that we ask for. And to me, as someone who's listening to the clips, it's quite important that those clips really highlight your podcast and what your podcast stands for. The clips you choose are quite important to showcase your character, to showcase who you are as people, to showcase what it is that you do, the message that you're trying to put across in your episodes. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight specifically was, does the clip make sense out of context? Because if you've included the title of the clip, I'm just going to use an example just because I've been working on it and it's coming out this week, not a plug. Shakespeare in Love. I've got an episode coming out on Shakespeare in Love. Great movie, by the way. But is the clip that I submit, does it make sense out of context? If I know the title is Shakespeare in Love, I want the clip to be about Shakespeare in Love because that's the title. I don't want the clip to be, 15 minutes of chat about maybe what the hosts have watched other than Shakespeare in Love. If the title is Shakespeare in Love, that's what I'm here for. So in that case, I would personally recommend selecting a part of that podcast episode that is focusing on Shakespeare in Love, that highlights something amazing about that episode in particular. Does it show your hosts in the best light? Maybe a particular host is incredibly knowledgeable about Shakespeare in Love. I'm just going to go with Shakespeare in Love. And if you've got a guest on talking about Shakespeare in Love, does it showcase the quality of that guest? Maybe the guest was the director of photography on Shakespeare in Love, as an example. Not that mine has the director of photography on Shakespeare in Love, but if you have a guest that specifically is on to talk about that topic, include it in the clip, because that person is going to be the selling point for your episode and the selling point for your clip. Now, you could get a judge who's not all that interested in Shakespeare in Love. However, the fact that the guest is going to be so knowledgeable, so interesting to listen to, is going to have some incredible insights, that is what the judges are looking for. They are going to be looking for a showcase of the incredible work that your podcast does. And if you've managed to get the director of photography for Shakespeare in Love on your podcast, absolutely highlight it. Take that 15-minute slot from wherever you start to wherever you end and include the juiciest of juicy information. Maybe that person, that guest, has given you something that no one else knew, that literally has never been reported in the press, never been, maybe some scientific discovery, maybe not about Shakespeare in Love, but something incredible. Absolutely include it, because that guest is the selling point. You are also the selling point because you are the host. You are asking that guest questions. Showcase your interview style if you are an interview podcast, because again, that is showcasing you. It's showcasing your podcast. It's showcasing why your podcast is here. So I think that's really important. So basically what I'm saying in a roundabout way, because I'm really good at waffling, is don't just take the first 15 minutes of each podcast episode. Try and find a really good part of that podcast. You might have to go back to some of your previous episodes and you might have to, I don't know, try and find where the best parts are, because maybe you don't have a record of that, but maybe just take a little bit of time with the entry and go back and just find those incredible moments where your podcast really stood out, really shone, really gave some incredible insight, incredible information, because ultimately that is what we are looking for. We are looking for outstanding podcasting in all respects, in all levels, but specifically outstanding indie podcasting. And just because you're an indie podcast, it does not mean you can't get the director of photography on Shakespeare in Love on your podcast. I don't know that for a fact. Please don't quote me on that. But you can still get incredible guests. And I know this for a fact because I know many podcasts who've managed to get incredible guests, maybe not the director of photography on Shakespeare in Love, but still incredible guests. So absolutely make sure that you highlight that. I'm using film podcasting as like an example, but it works for all categories of podcast. So, and yeah, make sure your links are correct as well. If you are going to put links to podcasts within any awards entry, please make sure they work before you put them in. Because the last thing that we want to do as a judge is try and find that episode elsewhere or try and fix a broken link. It just kind of saves us a bit of time, really. But we want to know what makes your podcast unique, and we want you to include as many examples of that as possible. So yeah, choose something that put it in there. Choose something that includes a brilliant moment. I think Emma wrote that actually. But yeah, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be the greatest scientific discovery of all time. It could just be a really funny joke, because I love laughing at podcasts. Some of my favorite podcasts are absolutely hilarious. And sometimes I'm walking, listening to podcasts, and I'm literally just like stifling, chuckling to myself so that people don't think I'm weird as I walk past them, laughing. But even if it's just a group of people and you are just sitting and having a chat, because that's what your podcast is about, and one of you cracks an incredible joke. I mean, honestly, if that's what your podcast is about, people just having a chat, that's great, because that is what your podcast's about. But anything like that, any kind of moment of sheer brilliance, that is what we want to see. So please include anything like that, and especially, and also particularly poignant as well, emotional podcasts. I mean, it's really difficult when you're listening to emotional stories. But there were several podcasts that I listened to last year for judging that were incredibly emotional, and it really stirred up a lot of emotion in me. And again, if that is what your podcast is about, if you're talking about important things, if you're talking about things like sexuality, relationships, incredibly emotive subjects, don't be afraid to include emotion in your podcast. And I say that as a podcaster who has included many emotional moments in her own podcast. Don't be afraid to show emotion. Don't be afraid to show moments of that maybe are a little bit upsetting, perhaps. Because if that's pertinent to what you do, if that's you telling that particular story, then absolutely highlight it. Don't be afraid to do so, because if it's supposed to elicit that emotion, then that's a winning podcast. There is no set template for a quote winning podcast. The only thing that I can do is kind of sit here and go, well, just be yourself. And that's kind of why I put it at the bottom, was most importantly, just be yourself or yourselves. We are not asking any more or any less of you than just being yourself and being as authentic to you as a podcaster, as an indie podcaster, as a UK and Ireland indie podcaster, than being yourself. And I think that's really important. Don't try and be anyone else. You can look at other podcasts and say, oh, well, they're doing something amazing. I want to be just like them. But don't. Because as I said at the start, you are the unique selling point of your podcast. What you do is amazing. So just be yourself. And I feel like you will shine by being yourself. And all you're doing with your entry into any awards is trying to highlight yourself. And you will. All I'm trying to do is kind of give you a little kind of nudge in the right direction so that we see who you are. And we want to see these incredible podcasters come forward. And what else have I put on my let me just quickly run through my document and just make sure I've included everything. I think I have. Let me just check. Honestly, it's like trying to put together slides and like a presentation on the internet for like people to watch. It's very daunting. I really wish Emma was here because she's so much better at all of this than I am. But basically, wherever you're entering a podcast into an awards, follow the rules that are there and just be yourself. Basically, I've taken like half an hour just to say that. But yeah, basically that's what I'm saying is just be yourself and you will shine. And I really hope that this will encourage people who maybe are a bit on the fence of being part of something like this, encourage them to do it. Because the feedback that I got personally from last year's event, from the people who came to the show and who I talked to, they were basically saying, we've been waiting for something like this. This is amazing. And it was a room full of indie podcasters who were literally just supporting each other, cheering each other on, talking to each other. I met some amazing people at last year's event, people who I'd never even heard of before. And they came up to me and they were talking to me, which, I mean, amazes me just generally because I'm a complete nerd. Who'd want to talk to me? But it was an incredible experience just to be in a room full of people who do the same thing that I do and love it as much as I do, and who were all there, not just because they were nominated, but they were there to support other people that also do the same thing that they do. And it may not be the same category, it may not be the same genre, it may not be the same type of podcast, but fundamentally, everyone there was an absolute winner. And I mean that genuinely. Everyone who was there was a winner. Everyone who entered last year was a winner because they actually took that step, because it's an unknown step. You don't know what's going to happen if you submit yourself for the Independent Podcast Awards. But let me tell you that imposter syndrome is real. And no matter what you think of your podcast and whether you think it's great, there will always be a part of you that says, oh, well, you know, I could do this, but I'm not going to win because there are so many people better than me. But you know what? You don't know unless you actually do it. And sometimes you've just got to do it. Like sometimes you've just got to have an idea and do it. Because basically that's how the Independent Podcast Awards came about in the first place. It was just an idea. And it was like, well, I've had this idea, so let's see if I can do it. And I couldn't do it. No way could I do it. But I managed to get in touch with someone who could do it. And that's really the fundamental same thing. It's just taking that leap. You know, to quote Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, because I will use movie analogies for anything, it's taking that leap of faith. And hopefully this will encourage people to take that leap of faith, because you just don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. So just do it. I've been ignoring the comments completely because I didn't want to get distracted by people that I know, but I know a couple of podcasts that I know in the comments, and I just didn't want to get distracted by them. So I haven't been ignoring comments, just FYI. I just wanted to kind of barrel through. Hi, Sarah. Oh, Sarah's here. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of get through everything without getting distracted by comments, because I probably would have. So yeah. Hi, Sarah, you're back.
Hi. Yes, I sense that you came to the end.
Sense that I was drowning. Like, oh my God, I need help. Sarah, help me.
Not at all. Not at all. But can I just say that was phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
You have to be kinder to yourself, Em. You were saying some things about yourself, and I was like, you're awesome, you're fabulous. And
no,
yeah,
I'm very self-deprecating. That's all.
But that was great session, and the points that you raised were great and very easy to implement as well, so people can take them on board. And when they are submitting, so what I'm going to do is, there we go. So at the bottom of my screen is a link to submit to the Independent Podcast Awards. Now, just as a caveat, this is just for the UK, isn't that right, Em?
Yep. So it is UK and Ireland.
UK and Ireland.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but obviously, take what Em has given you today. So all the wonderful advice, tips, and there was so much there. I was writing them down because I'm an independent podcaster as well. So I feel armed with so much information, so much valuable, actionable strategies and tips that I reckon that when I enter an award, maybe the Independent Podcast Awards, that should be on my list. But I feel that I'm going to do a cracking job. I'm going to make it hard for them to say no.
You never know.
You
just, like I say, take that leap of faith. If it works for Miles Morales, it works for everyone.
And if you're not in the UK, have a look at other awards around you. You don't know. So depending where you are in the world, get on Google, have a search for podcast awards, independent awards, anything that, yeah, because it's nice to get that recognition now. we have got some questions. So I'm just going to pop this
Okay.
other banner just as a reminder that we've got time. We've got about 10, 15-ish minutes, so we can get through as many questions as we can.
Mhm.
But as we're answering them, as people are asking them themselves, if there's a question that comes up for you, just pop them in the comments. Just make sure that you put question at the beginning. Okay. Are you ready to do some questions, Em?
Go for it.
Okay. So, first up, we have Anna Xavier from the podcast space. Hello, Anna.
Hi,
Great,
Anna.
great to see you here. And thank you for not only joining us, but kicking us off with the first question. Would you consider using AI to help us with the process of writing the pitch? If so, which prompts would you recommend?
Oh, that's an interesting question, Anna. Um, it's not something that we have considered. And I think, just from my point of view, personally, I feel like using AI is really not the best thing to do. Just from the point of view that I feel like we want you to write your pitch from you. We want you to tell us why your podcast is great. And I feel like if it comes from AI, I realize that you would obviously be writing the prompts for that, but it wouldn't then come from you. And as I said, you are the most important person kind of in that space. So it's not something that we've considered, but also I wouldn't recommend it personally. I realize it might probably save you a bit of time. However, the time that it would save you is probably well spent on actually telling us about you, because I want to know about you, Anna. I want to
Mm,
know why, what your feelings about your podcast, because AI can't tell you feelings. It can't tell you why it's saying something. It just says something. But you as a human being can tell me why you're telling me this. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say. I would personally leave AI. AI is great for a lot of things, but I don't think it's particularly suitable for this. And I feel like we might end up with many submissions that are very similar if they're using the same AI prompts to write it up. So yeah, like I say, just be yourself, and it doesn't have to be 100-word essay. It doesn't have to be a one-page essay. It could just be a few lines of text.
mm.
Um, but I think it's important it comes from you rather
And
than from anything else.
it's going to be so much better coming from you as well. And I think when it comes to AI, it's such a bit of like an unknown space. And also, people, I feel like it's a bit like Marmite as well. People either love it or hate it, don't they? Some people love using AI. They've got all the prompts, they use it, they love it, they're all invested in it. Where you have the other people who are like, nah, AI is not for me, can't do it, should stay away, should be all personal and stuff. So I think, like you're saying, when it comes to something as important as an award submission, it's like spend the time so it comes from
Mhm.
you, because it's going to come, how you come across is going to be much better from you personally than using AI.
Yeah.
So yeah, um but great question, Anna.
Yeah.
It
Great
is
question.
funny. It is funny, isn't it? Because AI, ah, its uses are so interesting and versatile that obviously it's going to come up in different areas. So I wonder if there is someone who has submitted using AI and whether they were successful. But that's a whole different kettle of fish, isn't
Yeah.
it? Right, next question. Dr. Marianne Trent, hi, thank you for joining us. I just checked and I have 27 5-star reviews. That's pretty good going, isn't it?
Yeah.
27 5-star. That's hard to say. Try and say that 5 times in a row. I find it hard getting people to rate and review. Is there
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
tips that
It
you
is
could give?
hard. It's hard getting anyone to kind of do anything. I can't even, the word's gone out of my head. I'm sure if Mark Asquith would hear, he was here, he would have the word. But to do anything for your podcast, to interact with your podcast in any way. I mean, I would say 27 5-star reviews. That's really good. Look, don't discount the fact that, don't say you've got, only 27 is amazing. And they are all 5-star reviews. They are all people who listened to your podcast and loved it. So I would say, although you're saying that you find it hard getting people to rate and review, I mean, there's nothing wrong with putting a call out on social media. If you use social media to say, review my podcast, please. Here's a link. But 27 5-star reviews is incredible work. So I would say if you were putting yourself forward, Marianne, that 27 5-star reviews is an incredible amount of supporting evidence for us, as the Independent Podcast Awards, because that's incredible. And you should be really proud of those 5-star reviews, because clearly you're doing amazing work. But yeah, if you want more, then absolutely go out on social media. LinkedIn maybe might be a good place, and just say, listen to my podcast and let me know what you think. Give me a review. And hopefully you'll get more 5-star reviews. But I would certainly say that you seem to be doing a pretty incredible job to have 27 5-star reviews. So
and the fact that 27, how I would think about it is 27 people have, because we're all busy individuals, aren't we? We all have busy lives, a lot of stuff going on. The fact that 27 people have taken the time to review your podcast on a platform, on an app, that's amazing, isn't it? So wonderful. Right. Next question. And this question is from Nikki Valance. If I clip part of an episode which crosses over a transition, does that count as more than one clip for my entry?
What does crossing over a transition mean? Is that from going from like over an ad or something?
So, Nikki, if you could expand on that question, just so if we can give some more information there, then it'll help get the right answer to you. While you're doing that, let's move on to another one just for now. The podcast nobody asked for. Now that's an interesting title in itself, isn't it?
I love these guys. Carry on. Yeah.
Would you recommend clips from separate episodes, or are multiple from one episode an option?
First of all, hi guys. It's nice to see you here. Now, I would personally recommend clips from separate episodes, only because I want to see a variety of different things. I want to see examples of all of the different things that you personally do. I wouldn't necessarily say you discount multiples from one episode. However, to give as much variety as possible, I would say because obviously we're asking for 3, so I would say utilize those 3 and pick it from 3 separate episodes, because I think that gives the judge who's listening the best possible window into what you do. So that's just for me personally. As a judge, I want to see a variety of all the different things that a podcast can do and examples of what that podcast can do. So I would recommend separate episodes, and obviously we ask for 3. So I would recommend you pick the best 3 episodes, definitely.
Fabulous answer. And I am pleased to say that Nikki has got back to us. So, transition between segments with my transition music. So, outro to news or news to guest interview segment.
Okay. So I would say that if it's a case of you've got like a news segment that maybe you've got something in there into like a guest interview segment, I would say that obviously you want to pick the best kind of 15 minutes worth of that. I mean, I would personally maybe lean more into the guest interview segment, because if that's obviously the highlight of your particular episode, then that is probably more valuable to a judge than maybe a news segment. But then I suppose it depends what's in the news segment. So I would say, as the podcaster, you know your podcast best. So
Mm.
you can obviously use your own judgment for that. I mean, there's nothing to say that if you do include a particular clip, and maybe it is kind of outro to news or news to guest interview segment, you could maybe put a note in there and just say, from X time to X time is my news segment, and then going into guest interview segment from X time to X time, just so the judge knows that there's going to be a slight transition between the two.
Yeah.
But I would use your judgment on that, Nikki, because as the podcaster, you know your podcast better than anyone. You know your own highlights. You know where you shine. So pick the part where you shine, and then if you need to elaborate, we've got a little note section where you can obviously put the times and stuff like that for your episodes. So I would just put in that note section a little bit of information for the judge. There's nothing to say that you can't give a little bit of extra context in that section just to explain why you've chosen the clip you've chosen.
And I think this is where as well, you need to read up and get familiar with the requirements as well, because as long as, so you're allowed three 15-minute clips, right? So if it's in the same episode, but it just goes over to the different transitions, that would only be one for that particular one. It wouldn't be counted because you've used different segments or different transitions, or however we're using the terminology. It wouldn't technically be classed as two. I don't know.
I mean, like I say, personally, I would recommend you only have the 15-minute from each episode anyway. That would be my personal recommendation.
Okay.
But like I say, an individual podcaster will know where they shine. And I think it's important. It is important to pick the best clips, obviously. But use your own judgment. You are the best judge of what you do. Me as a judge, I'm very much an outsider, but I will obviously take what you've put. But to be honest, I will also read the notes as well. That's maybe something I should have put in the slides. But obviously, if you feel like you need to add a little bit of context, give a little bit more information to a judge to kind of explain why you've included that, then by all means do it. It's giving more context and giving more information is not a bad thing. So yeah, I would welcome it, to be honest. I want to know more about the podcast anyway. Like, I'm invested. So yeah, I hope that's answered your question anyway, Nikki.
I'm sure it has. And I just want to apologise if anyone heard a ferocious dog then barking in the background. It's always the way, isn't it? Like, pets will time when they want to make a noise, when they want to bark, when it's really inconvenient. So usually I don't think I've had an issue during Growth Labs with Benny the dog, so my dog, barking. But I just muted because I heard, as you were answering and giving a fantastic answer, I heard Benny the dog in the background, and I was like, Benny.
I didn't hear Benny, but maybe
Okay,
that's I was talking. So
that's fine.
yeah.
Then we should be safe. But independent creators, independent. You have these things that you have to contend with. You're creating.
Exactly.
You're not in a fancy plush recording studio. Danny Brown, should we do one more question? Because time is flying and I've just looked and we're nearly there. So Danny Brown, thank you for asking this question. With so many podcast award shows, how do you decide which ones to submit to for most bang for buck and chance to stand out? Great question, Danny.
That is a great question. And it's an interesting question as well, because obviously the Independent Podcast Awards, we're a fairly new awards. So because we're quite new, we're obviously we did get a lot of entries last year. We did get more entries than we thought, but probably not as many as maybe some of the bigger awards. So realistically, someone like us, you have got more of a chance because it's a smaller pool of people. So, but obviously we are UK and Ireland only, so we wouldn't be able to accept any applications from anywhere else in the world. But it is an interesting question. How do you decide? And I mean, there's quite a lot of award shows that are quite niche. So they might, obviously, we're only independent, so we only cover independents. The British Podcast Awards, obviously, is only British podcasts, but they cover, obviously, big corporate shows and independents. The International Women's Podcast Awards, which unfortunately I believe they're now closed, but they obviously only focus on female presenting, and I think maybe non-binary people as well. I'm not entirely certain on that, but it's mostly female and female presenting people. So there are niche awards out there, and I think, like most things, you've got to think whether, is this for me? Is this something that I want to do? Is this something that I want to be involved in? Because you might not, and that's okay. Look, it's completely okay to not actually want to enter every single awards show. I guess it's, does it speak to you? And if it does speak to you, then have a go. The worst, I think the worst thing you can do is kind of sit there and say, oh, well, I'm never going to stand a chance, so I won't bother, because you're never going to stand a chance if you don't. So why not do? Because that's the only way you are going to stand a chance. So, there's loads out there. But obviously, the Independent Podcast Awards is there for the indies in the UK and Ireland. So, yeah, hopefully, I'm sorry, Danny, you're in Canada, so. I feel quite bad for Danny because he's in Canada, so he can't obviously enter. But anyone in the UK and Ireland who's an independent can. And obviously, the definitions. Excuse me, sorry. It's because I've been talking a lot. The definitions of an independent podcaster, they're all on the website for the Independent Podcast Awards, including eligibility. The eligibility period, which I did say I'd mention. So that is our eligibility period is episodes between the 1st of June 2023 to the 31st of May 2024. And to be eligible, you ideally have to have released at least 10 episodes of your podcast in the last 12 months, or have it be a contained mini-series. Or we're quite flexible. So it's, or if you've been podcasting for a while, you have a notable back catalogue, but you've been a bit sporadic during the last 12 months, we'll also accept that as well, because independent podcasters, we all have lives, and lives get in the way of podcasting sometimes. And we understand that. So we're not especially strict about it. But yeah, if you want to know what we class as an independent podcast, all of the information is all on the FAQs at the website, which I should probably say what the website is. Have you put it up? Oh, you have put it up. That's great. Independentpodcastawards.com. You can find all of the information on there. And obviously, if anyone does have any questions that maybe they want to ask, I am available. You can find me on social media. You can get in touch with me. And if I can't answer the question, then I will forward you over to Emma Turner, who will be able to answer your question.
Wonderful. So. And I'm very sorry, but we are rapidly running out of time. Don't apologize. Never apologize. It's all fabulous things that you're saying. And yeah, like Emma said, just head on over to independentpodcastawards.com. There you'll get the link to all the socials and all the how you can contact and ask more questions throughout the session as well. I have been putting Em's social handles on as well, so you can reach out there. But remember that after this comes to an end, which is going to be very shortly, after this comes to an end, It won't be available on YouTube. However, it will be available for those who are a Captivate customer. So this session will be uploaded to Growth Labs in our platform. And obviously, we've got a whole bank and resource of other wonderful Growth Lab sessions as well. So yeah, go and check that out. And then obviously, when we do publish this one, we'll make sure that we also include all the links that you could possibly want or need for and the Independent Podcast Awards. So I'm very sorry, but we're going to have to say goodbye,
Oh, it's honestly, I was so nervous at the start, but it's been an absolute joy to talk at all of you lovely people for an hour. So thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah, for having me on, for being so helpful in getting all of this set up. And huge thanks to Captivate for, asking me to come on. Captivate are great. I am with Captivate, just getting that in there. They're a great host. So that's not the only reason they had me on. But yeah, it's been great. And thank you to everyone in the comments as well. For being so kind and for some really wonderful questions. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And wherever you are in the world, whatever time of day it is, have the most wonderful rest of your evening, day, morning, whatever that is. In the UK, there is some sunshine for once. So
Yay.
I'm going to go and try and enjoy some of that on my face, aren't
I? Me too.
I? Right. Oh, sorry. Were you about to say something?
Oh, I did. I said me too.
Oh, me too. There you go. Me and
yeah.
are going because it's end of our working day now. It's rolling past 5 p.m. So, we can clock off and go and find an ice cream in the sunshine. But
Yep.
yes, thank you so much. And look out for future Growth Labs. And we shall see you there. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.